The trees
She
came
waits,
for the city
the guardian
slowly,
of the sun,
not
the
as
mist
conquerors.
yields to the
They
dawn
moved
of a
the
new
way
age.
time moves, without announcement, without apology. By the time anyone found it, centuries later, the jungle had done its work completely. Roots had split the temple stairways apart. Vines had pulled the carved
In her
faces off
eyes
the walls.
lay the weight of an
Trees
empire
grew
of
from the
destiny.
centers of courtyards
Here
where
stood the
kings
princess,
had once stood
witnessing the
before
height of her
thousands.
kingdom's power, a vibrant
city was not
civilization
destroyed.
unmatched in the region.
It was simply
An unnatural
left.
darkness falls upon the city,
How does a
a warning of
civilization
what is to come.
vanish while its temples still stand? The answer begins with a person. Her name was Ishel, daughter of a Maya ruler in the southern lowlands, born at the full height of her civilization's power. She was trained in the sacred calendar, raised to believe her bloodline connected the human world to the divine. She would live long enough to watch all of it come apart. She would witness the final days of her kingdom and carry its memory into a world that would spend centuries forgetting it existed. Ixchel's earliest memory was not of the palace. It was of her father's hands. He had taken her, very small, to the top of the main temple before dawn. When they reached the summit, before the sun had cleared the horizon, he knelt beside her and pointed east. "Watch," he said. "The sun rises in the same place it always has. That is what the gods promise. We are here to keep that promise going." She was perhaps 5 years old. She didn't fully understand, but she understood the feeling. The immensity of the sky, the cities spread below like something dreamed rather than built, and her father's certainty that this was the correct order of things. Her education began at 7 with a priest named Ah Kin, a precise man who smelled of copal incense. He taught her the long count calendar, the Maya system of measuring time in cycles so vast they made a human life feel like a single heartbeat. He taught her the glyphs, the astronomical charts, the sacred logic that connected the movements of Venus to the fate of kings. "The gods write in cycles," he told her once, drawing a spiral in the dust. "Everything returns. The question is never whether something will end. The question is whether you can read when." She grew up believing the world was readable, that if you studied hard enough, prayed correctly, performed the rituals with precision, the universe would respond in kind. The rains would come, the harvests would hold, the cities would endure. What no one had taught her was what happens when the sky stops keeping its end of the arrangement. The first bad harvest came when Ishel was 16. The rains were simply late. Then a month past the date farmers had reliably planted for generations. The maize came up thin and pale. Life continued. One difficult year was within the range of normal. The second bad harvest was worse. The rains arrived but departed early. The granaries, already depleted, were drawn down further. She noticed things the official reports did not mention. The servants who brought her meals were thinner. The farmers who arrived to pay tribute wore the exhaustion of people working as hard as they ever had and falling further behind anyway. The priests had stopped saying the gods were testing their people. They said something different now. The gods are displeased. Testing implied a difficulty with an end. Displeasure implied fault. And in a society where the ruler's primary responsibility was to maintain cosmic balance, displeasure pointed in a very specific direction. One evening she found her father reading the latest priestly report by lamplight. He sat very still for a long time after he finished it. "Father," she said. He looked up, and for the first time in her life, the certainty she had always seen in his face was not there. What was there instead was fear. By the third year of drought, the rituals had changed. The offerings grew more elaborate. The bloodletting happened more frequently. Ceremonies that had once lasted hours now stretched through entire nights. Drums that did not stop. Copal smoke so thick it blurred the stars. Priests offering blood and promising rain that never came. One midnight, standing in the smoke with her legs aching, Ishel looked at the sky. It was clear, full of stars, completely indifferent. The sky does not know we are here. She pushed the thought down. She was tired. But it came back when the prisoners arrived, 12 captured warriors from a rival city. The ceremony took most of a day. The priests called it holy. The drums called it necessary. Ishel stood among the noble women and watched 12 human beings beg to live, while thousands of her people called it righteousness. She kept her face still. She had been trained since childhood to keep her face still in public. But her hands, hidden inside the folds of her robe, were shaking. Afterward, she found Akin in the observatory, recording Venus as if the day had contained nothing unusual. "Teacher, the rains still haven't come. We have offered everything they asked." "We have offered what we believed they required," he said quietly. "There is a difference." He looked at her for a long moment. What she saw in his face was something she had never seen there before. The expression of a man who had asked himself the same question and had not found an answer he trusted. The rains did not come. The 4th year began dry. The attack came from the northeast, not from strangers, from Calakmul, a rival city that shared the Maya language, the Maya gods, the Maya calendar. The drought had made the calculations simple. A weakened neighbor with less empty granaries is an emergency. The first messenger arrived before dawn, gray-faced after 2 days of running. 3 border villages burned. Harvest stores taken. Men of fighting age gone. Her father listened without interrupting, then spoke to his generals. "How many days to reinforce the eastern garrison?" 6. "If we pull from the northern positions." Pull from the northern positions. It was the beginning of a sequence of decisions that each made sense individually and collectively led toward catastrophe. The alliances he had maintained for years unraveled in months. Former allies went silent. Trading partners disappeared. "Silence is its own kind of message," he told her one evening, sharpening a blade, something she had never seen him do himself. "When people who have always spoken to you stop speaking, they are telling you which way they think this will go." The refugees arrived that same month. Families from outlying villages walking for days with children and whatever they could carry. Ixchel stopped beside one woman in the plaza, perhaps 30, feet wrapped in cloth that had been something else before it became bandaging, a child sleeping against her shoulder. "Is your village gone?" Ixchel asked. "There's nothing left to go back to," the woman said. She was too tired for deference. She knew the end had come before anyone said the words. A quality of alarm in voices through the palace walls. A different rhythm in the guards' footsteps. Then the screaming started. Ix-Chab burst through the door. Calicmo's forces are inside the outer walls, and some of our own people from the lower districts. Your father says you have to leave now. She found him in the corridor outside the throne room, not in ceremonial armor, in the practical leather and cotton of actual war. He looked, for the first time in her life, simply like a man. He pulled her against him briefly, and held her at arm's length. She understood in that moment that what she had read in his face for 4 years as fear was something else. It was grief. The grief of a man who had seen this end coming and spent years unable to stop it. Go east, through the market corridor, out the trader's gate. Take Ix-Chab. Take the jade your mother left you. Don't stop. She watched him walk toward the north gate, his footsteps even and unhurried. She stood there long enough to understand she was making a choice. Then she turned and ran. The city burned in sections. The smell was cedar smoke and something sharper underneath, something she had no name for, because she had never smelled a city dying before. At the tree line, she looked back once. The main temple glowed against firelight. The same carved faces she had walked past every day of her life. She turned into the jungle. She never saw her father again. The road east was full of people. Hundreds, then thousands. The surviving population of a city that had taken generations to build, flowing out through every exit into the dark. The hierarchy that had organized her world had dissolved somewhere in the smoke. People walked beside her without bowing. She found she didn't mind. She was past minding. On the second morning, sitting by a stream while Ix-Chab rested a twisted ankle, Ix-Chel looked back in the direction they had come. The jungle was already between them. "Do you think it's still standing?" Ix-Chab asked. "The stone will stand for a long time," Ix-Chel said, "but not us. Not anymore." What finished the city was not the enemy and not the fire. It was the absence of people willing to maintain it. The systems that had kept tens of thousands of people fed and connected required people who believed in them, and belief, once broken at sufficient scale, does not easily reassemble. The jungle, which had always been patient, began its work. Ix-Chel was 23 years old, alive, with the jade her mother had left her and Ix-Chab walking beside her on a road toward a village where someone had a cousin. It was not nothing, but it was very different from forever. Explorers who found the great abandoned cities asked the wrong question. They looked at the scale of what they'd found and asked, what catastrophe did this? The honest answer is less dramatic, and in some ways more disturbing. No single catastrophe ended the classic Maya civilization. What happened was a convergence of multiple systems failing at once. The drought was real. Scientists studying lake sediment cores from the Yucatan have identified severe, prolonged dry periods between roughly 800 and 1000 AD, precisely the period of collapse. Some lasted decades, and the Maya had been clearing forests for centuries, weakening the very land their agriculture depended on. Then war turned hardship into catastrophe. City-states became enemies.
Trade routes failed. Rulers who had derived their authority from maintaining cosmic order could not produce the one thing their people needed: rain. When a belief system fails its most fundamental test, the authority built on it collapses in ways military defeat alone never could. No single moment. No final battle. Just human beings facing pressure from every direction, making desperate choices, and paying for them. Ixchel did not disappear with her city. She found the village. She stayed. She taught the children there to read the calendar, the essential rhythm of it, when to plant, how to read the sky for what it was actually saying rather than what you hoped it was saying. She grew old in a world smaller than the one she had been born into. She outlived her teacher, Akin, who died still recording Venus in a codex he had carried through 3 relocations. What she did not outlive was the calendar. The count of days continued. The sun rose, as her father had promised, in the same place it always had. Today, more than 7 million Maya descendants live across Mexico and Central America, speaking 31 distinct Maya languages, a line unbroken back to the civilization that built these cities. The cities were abandoned, but the people endured. The Maya were never lost, only their cities were. They are not monuments to a people who disappeared. They are monuments to people who survived.